The Liberal Party now technically has the majority of MPs in the House of Commons. That's a technical majority government. They increased their seat count this past week when Marilyn Gladu crossed the floor. Gladu, a once staunch social conservative, was welcomed by Liberals with open arms at the party's convention in Montreal this weekend. Despite Gladu's reputation, Carney says Liberal Party values remain the same.
We have our values of solidarity, of inclusivity, of sustainability, of the rights of women, of all the rights in the Charter of Freedom. We have those core values. Those values don't change. Others come to support the mission of the party and the government.
In order to secure a permanent majority, the Liberals will need to win one of the 3 vacant seats in the House of Commons. They'll have the chance to do that tomorrow night when Prime Minister Carney's government will be put to the test in 3 by-elections. Just one win tomorrow night will tip the scales and get them to that magic number needed for a majority, 172. This morning, I spoke to the Chief Government Whip, Mark Gerretsen, about the floor crossing and a potential Liberal majority. Mark Gerretsen, thank you for coming back to the show. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me, Rosemary.
I'm going to start. You just got back from Montreal. It was a really, really big convention. What was it like in there, given the momentum that the party seems to have right now?
I've been going to these things for 3 decades or so. I've never seen the kind of energy that I saw in the last few days.
Yeah.
And not just in like the main plenary where the speakers are, just in the hallways talking to people. 4,500 delegates is the most we've ever had, of which over half were brand new to being ever at a convention. So it was truly electric to see the people that were there, how excited they were, how optimistic they were. And like I said, I don't think I've ever been to one quite as exciting as the one we just experienced in Montreal.
I mean, that goes to show how quickly things change, certainly.
Yeah.
And one of the people that was in the hallways and was being welcomed into the fold was Marilyn Gladu. How comfortable are you with Marilyn Gladu being part of the same party as you, given some of the things that she said in the past, whether it be about restricting abortion, conversion therapy, and those kinds of things?
Well, first of all, as we know, the Prime Minister had conversations with Marilyn about those things specifically, and she said that there was not going to be an issue. She was going to be voting with the government when it came to issues of equality, women's right to choose, et cetera. But, I'll say this. 343 of us from across the country go into that room to debate our ideas. And if after spending a lot of time in that room, somebody says, actually, you know what, I think my values line up better with another political party, I think that it's our obligation to give that person a chance. And I welcome it. And I think that it's just democracy in action. Like, if that's not democracy, then what is? I mean, it's about exchange of ideas and trying to convince people that the way that you see things is the way to go forward. So I embrace it, and I think we give everybody a chance.
I mean, the voters of the riding may have a different view that is in fact not democracy. It's allowed, of course, but I mean, it was just a year ago she was, voted in under a different banner with different promises.
The Westminster parliamentary system is not new. It's been around for hundreds of years. And floor crossing has happened not just in Canadian democracy, but in all Westminster parliamentary systems. You see it happening. It's nothing new. I mean, I think Stephen Harper put it the best when he said the only people that seem to be complaining about floor crossing are those who are not receiving the floor crossers. And he's absolutely right. I know that even Pierre Poilievre has been on about that recently, but he voted against a bill that was brought in when they were in government to ban floor crossing. So I think the important thing here is to just try, especially from the Conservative perspective, is to be a little bit more self-reflective as to why people are considering leaving your party as opposed to complaining about the system.
So does that mean that the party will take anyone? Because the views of again, Ms. Gladu were, extreme in some cases, particularly when it came around to vaccinations and COVID. So does that mean now there's no limit if a person's willing to buy into your set of values?
Well, I look, I put it this way. What I said earlier is that the whole reason why we debate in the House of Commons is to try to convince people that our way of looking at things is the right way. And if after a while somebody says, okay, you know what, I think that you're right, and I'd like to join your political party, who are we to say, well, no, you're not? Like, I mean, that's what democracy is all about. So I'm always willing to work with people who say that they want to work with me too. And I think that that's what Canadians expect of us. So am I willing to give people a chance? Yeah, of course I am. I think that that's what Canadians expect of us, and that's what the democratic process expects of us.
What about the by-elections tomorrow? There's two that we would, I think, expect you would hold on to. So that would bring you a majority, which is pretty astonishing, and a different way to cobble together a majority than we've seen in the past, and we'll see what happens with Terrebonne. What would that change practically for you and for the government in the House? Well,
first thing, I've been around this long enough to know that you should never take anything for granted, so we don't. I personally went to University of Rosedale and to Scarborough to help, as did so many others. So we treat all these by-elections the same way. Putting ourselves into a majority situation certainly changes the dynamics of Parliament. It changes the dynamics of our committees. It changes pretty much everything. So I think we cross that bridge when we get to it. We're not taking anything for granted. We wait till Monday. We see the results come Monday night, and then we'll start to have those discussions.
But what do you think it would allow the government to do that it's not able to do now, just in terms of moving, more quickly with your agenda? Or
generally speaking, it allows you to move legislation quicker because you have majorities in committees. You can start to get things done. But I mean, the opposition always plays a very important role, and that's to hold the government to account. And the opposition will always have tools at its disposal, primarily the tool of slowing things down. So, I mean, I don't know how much it changes in terms of our willingness to try to find compromise, because, again, in our democratic system, compromise and trying to find ways through that appeases as many people and political parties as possible is always the vehicle to get things done the fastest. So I think a lot of people are putting a lot of emphasis on this whole majority thing that could happen next week, but it doesn't change the fact that we have a responsibility in the House of Commons to try to work with as many political parties and as many people as possible to get legislation through.
But it would also mean that we wouldn't have an election anytime soon, presumably, or unless the Prime Minister decides that he wants one.
Certainly not my decision, so I will.
What does it change, do you think, in terms of how the opposition relates to the Liberals in the House? Would you expect them to change the way they operate? That could embolden them to be even more difficult if they wanted to be?
I expected the opposition to change after the last election, and I didn't see much change. So I don't know. I hope that there is an opportunity to be self-reflective and to say, okay, maybe our approach needs to be a little bit different. I mean, I spent 10 years in the House of Commons watching Conservatives try to make every issue about individuals and personal attacks as opposed to really about issues. And I think that the world that we live in right now, Canadians are looking for substance. They're looking for people to bring forward ideas and policies, not slogans, but actual things that are going to make the lives of Canadians better. So I think that what the opposition really needs to do is to figure out what their role is in that, and to try to work with the government to make our democracy stronger and to make our position in the world better.
I'll just end on this. Are there other people that are going to cross the floor from what you know?
Like you've heard from many others, there's always conversations going on, and we will see what comes of that.
Okay. Nice to see you this morning.
Thanks for having me, Rosemary.
Thanks. The Liberal Party is on the brink of securing a majority government. The Liberals will have that chance tomorrow night when Prime Minister Mark Carney's government will be put to the test in 3 by-elections. The Liberals need to win just one of those races to clinch that majority. The magic number there, 172. Carney rallied supporters at the Liberal convention this weekend ahead of those critical by-elections.
This is not the time for politics as usual, for petty differences, for political point scoring. United, we will build Canada strong. A Canada for all, a Canada strong that no one can ever take away.
The Liberals raised their seat count and took some of the pressure off those by-elections when an unexpected MP, Marilyn Gladue, crossed the floor. Over her 10 years as MP, Gladue was known as a social conservative and a strong supporter of her former party. Earlier, I spoke to Government House Leader Steven MacKinnon about how the latest Liberal MP fits into the party and how a potential majority could change the political landscape. Minister MacKinnon, nice of you to join us from Montreal. Appreciate it.
It's so great to be with you.
So your party gained another new MP this week with Marilyn Gladue. She's known for being pretty right-leaning with social conservative views. I'll just give some examples for people who don't know her. She opposed the legalization of cannabis. She was going to allow private member bills to restrict abortion. Tell me how those views fit into the Liberal Party that you belong to.
Well, the Liberal Party that I've spent my life serving is the party that wants equality for women, obviously, women's right to choose, has always stood for human rights. That's the party that is a home for anyone who chooses to join it and to adhere to those values, as well as the platform that we ran on and the leadership of Mr. Carney. And I have absolutely no doubt that Ms. Gladue, who we welcome to our group, who we welcome to the Liberal Party of Canada, is going to be a very, very strong supporter of all of those things.
It is, I think you would recognize, as a longtime politician, it might be hard for Canadians to wrap their heads around that, how a person could have some of those beliefs and values, and then decide in conversations that she's willing to accept what you call liberal values going forward.
Well, look, Ms. Gladue is also known, I think you're selling her a bit short. She's also known for reaching across the aisle. She's managed to pass 2 private members' bills as an opposition member of Parliament. She has a long business career and is actually quite well liked by colleagues from all sides of the House. She should not be reduced to a caricature of one moment or another. She is a very, very productive member of Parliament from a very, very important part of our country, Sarnia-Lambton, and we're very, very keen to have her and her talents added to our group.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that she's very likable and that she wants to work across the aisle. What I'm saying is that she has previously, and not very long ago, held views that are diametrically the opposite of what your party represents. And she's now putting those views aside because she wants to be part of the government, I guess?
Well, the Liberal Party is a party of principle, but here's the thing, Rosemary, and you and I have discussed this before. Canadians who live in conservative ridings are looking at their Member of Parliament and saying, what are you doing to be part of the solution? Canada, like many places around the world, we look at world events, we look at major changes going on in this world. They see Mr. Carney with a strategy, the right strategy for Canada, and they look at those Members of Parliament and say, what are you doing to be a productive Member of Parliament and be part of the solution? And that is a very, very appealing thing to many people who live in conservative ridings, including some of the MPs for those ridings. Then they look at the alternative, Mr. Polliev, and see someone who likes to reduce very serious issues to sound bites. Seems to have a lot of difficulty getting his party behind him, and by that I mean his parliamentary caucus behind him in terms of some of the strategies and communications that he undertakes, and that's been a source of frustration for many Conservative members of Parliament. I don't think those are deniable things, and we're, for our part, going to continue on the path and on the strategy that Mr. Carney has laid out, building Canada strong. You saw us announce a major port expansion in Montreal last week. We are going to continue with those kinds of things, and I think Canadians are responding to Mr. Carney's plans and policies in very positive ways.
I certainly understand that the context you're talking about, and Canadians do as well, but the role of the official opposition is awfully important as well, I would argue, inside the House of Commons, to make sure that the government is committed to following through on the things that it promised, or to try to improve legislation. So, I mean, it sounds to me like you're sort of downplaying the role of Conservatives in some ways. The Conservatives have an important role to play as well. Yeah.
Of course they do, absolutely, and many people are looking at this opposition, which has spent a lot of time, it must be said, obstructing committees and engaging in reducing issues to caricature rather than debating seriously on the issues of the day. This is up to them to manage, but the role of the official opposition and all opposition in the House of Commons is particularly in a minority parliament, is absolutely essential. I think people are frustrated with how that effort has been led on their side of the House.
Okay, well, you mentioned a minority parliament. Technically, as you know, you have a majority, but of course these 3 by-elections on Monday will solidify things one way or another. What would that change, do you think, I know it would change practically, but in terms of how you get the agenda through the House of Commons, how would that change how you would do your job if you had the majority?
Well, Canadians sent a parliament back after the last election, Rosemary, that was very close to a Liberal majority. 1 or 2 seats on either side, I don't think will change our duty to be unifiers, our duty to reach across the aisle of the House of Commons, to work with other parties on solutions. We've found some success at that in the last few weeks. We've passed the Budget Implementation Act, as you know, some other important legislation, including crime legislation. So we've made a lot of progress. We'll continue that impulse of working across party lines. We think the times require and demand that we work with other parties on these solutions. We want to be a unifying government. We want to bring solutions that Canadians from all walks of life, from all regions, can adhere to. So I don't think anything about Monday changes that.
I'll just end on this. We have reported there's as many as 9 other MPs who are in some sort of level of conversation about joining the Liberal Party. Should we expect more people? Do you think those conversations continue?
I'm not going to speculate on any of that. I certainly can't confirm that kind of speculation. What I can say is that there are, as I just described, people who look longingly across the aisle of the House of Commons, see a party, a Liberal Party, a Prime Minister engaged in very, very important policies for a very, very serious moment. And there is some dissatisfaction on that side of the House. I don't think that's any secret, but we're going to continue doing what we do and building Canada strong.
Government House Leader Steven MacKinnon, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, Rosemary.
This potential Liberal majority has, of course, come at the cost of several Conservative MPs. So far, 4 MPs have defected to the governing party. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says those MPs should have to run again in a by-election.
Mark Carney is saying to Canadians, your vote does not count, that he will overpower the decision that you made through dirty backroom deals that give him unrestrained power to raise your taxes and increase your costs. I feel badly for Ms. Gladu's constituents. She has said that members of Parliament that flip parties after they were elected promising to be in a different one should be forced to run in a by-election. I couldn't agree more.
This comes, of course, as the Liberals gathered for their convention in Montreal, as we were just talking about, where they welcomed Marilyn Gladu, their newest member, and those Liberal sources continue to talk about more names to come, getting ready to cross the floor. Earlier, I spoke to a Conservative Alberta MP, Shuvaloy Majumdar, about the state of the Conservative Party. Shuvaloy Majumdar, thank you so much for joining me.
Glad to be here.
Okay, well, so we'll start with this 4th Conservative MP who has now joined the Liberal caucus, Marilyn Gladu. I think you would agree, a little more right-leaning than the other people that have left caucus, and I wonder what you think that says about how people are feeling inside Conservative caucus.
Well, more importantly, I think a lot of these people, our colleagues in the House, are going to have to answer to the people that elected them. There's this particular compact that you get, and I'm only a new member of Parliament. I've been around for 2.5 years. But I've looked at a lot of our constituents right in the eyes and made a commitment to get the job done for them on their issues. So they're going to have to go back home and have an accountability with their people and explain to them why they did what they did and betrayed that confidence. It doesn't serve our democracy well to have this type of bait and switch happening, and ultimately these caucus members that have decided to cross are going to be held accountable by their own people.
That's totally fair, but surely there is also a message for the Conservative Party and your leader in this as well. Because 4 is a big number in a short period of time.
I worry about the message that this delivers to the Canadian public at large. Here's a country that has profoundly deep questions about trust in their institutions, trust in their democracy. And our democracy resulted in a narrowly contested election in which they wanted a minority Liberal Parliament constrained by the constructive ideas of a conservative opposition, an energetic conservative opposition. It was a very contested election. That's what our democracy reflected, and that's what's being undermined today. And I worry about the lack of trust that this is going to introduce more widely in the public, the lack of faith in delivering on the promises that parties have made, and especially for the priorities that we delivered during the campaign. Every major issue that Conservatives ran on became a consensus in this country. And this government has had the support of Conservatives to move major decisions on hard issues.
Yeah, but you're kind of making the other point here, and that is if the Liberals are borrowing, to be generous, some of the ideas from the Conservatives. They're inspired. Yeah. If the Conservative caucus has been supporting some of the legislation because it moves, you believe, the country in the right direction, now we're getting to a point where it's very difficult to differentiate the parties. And I wonder if that's part of the problem, that some people actually see the Liberal Party doing the things Conservatives have been talking about.
Well, listen, for more than 8 million voters that Conservatives now represent, we have not seen a single result on the decisions that need to be taken, not on major infrastructure projects, not on crime, not on immigration, not on stemming.
Well, some of it has started. Some of that stuff has
He's
started.
had a year to make massive decisions to so-called build Canada strong, but he hasn't built anything. And so the decision point that Canadians, I think, are starting to realize is that there's a world of illusions that Carney Liberals are presenting and a relentless pursuit of actually accomplishing results that Pierre Poilievre is advancing. And that's the test. I mean, the Prime Minister himself had said, measure himself by the price of groceries. Well, we have a country now where half our people live paycheck to paycheck. Every report about food bank usage smashes the last record. It's a dystopian landscape out there, and the people of this country deserve a government that's working for them.
Okay, but are you telling me there's no conversation inside Conservative caucus about why this is happening and what you can do to stop more people from leaving?
Listen, our caucus is united. It's focused. We reflect the frustrations.
Well, you probably thought that 3 days ago, and then someone else left.
Our caucus unity has been strong, and when you see the teamwork that we generally have, it's actually quite effective across the country. We have people who now represent from Windsor to Newfoundland, districts that historically have not been conservative for decades. We represent a voice of people in this country who have put their hope on us to deliver the job of advocating on their issues in every single day. And in that, we're completely focused. The frustrations that we feel are the frustrations of our people who wonder why our democracy is being diminished this way.
Well, I mean, for sure, it feels it's being diminished for perhaps the people in the riding or for you, but for some people, they feel that this is actually going to get the government potentially closer to a majority. We'll see what happens Monday night, and enable them to push their agenda forward in a much easier way.
They haven't had much of a barrier. I mean, the issues that Conservatives raise in committee and in Parliament are constructive ones about our civil liberties, about our religious freedoms, about ways in which we can unleash our resources. We've been proactive about all the kinds of legislation that would fix this country over the last year, positions that Liberals technically ran on but refused to act on. So, you know, these power games, these machinations of Ottawa that deny people who are desperate and hurting the actual results that they deserve aren't serving anybody.
Does a majority, if they manage to get to those numbers on Monday night, does that in some way give Conservatives a bit more freedom? You don't have to worry about an election. You can take positions. You don't need to cooperate with the government if you don't want to. You can, maybe it will give you some ability to better differentiate yourself.
I think we've been very focused on being the party that will provide results for the priorities of Canadians. We've been very successful at doing that over the last year. And frankly, more importantly, it's about the democracy that our country has. We're a parliamentary democracy. We have elections where candidates run under parties and are provided results. Our first-past-the-post system resulted in a minority Liberal government with a fierce opposition with the capacity to pull the plug on the government if it decided to cross the lines. Now, the Carney Liberals have completely betrayed that trust. They're betraying the institutions that our democracy
Or your
built.
leader has lost the trust of people inside his own caucus.
I will tell you, the leader has received over 90%, nearly 90% of support at the Calgary Convention just months ago. He is the only leader in this country who is working on the priorities of Canadians and advancing them relentlessly.
Has anyone approached you?
I'm probably single because I'm not sure when somebody's flirting with me, so I may be completely unaware if they were attempting to. But I think what most Liberals would understand is that I'm a fierce and proud Conservative that will that made a commitment to the great people of Calgary heritage and will honor it in every day.
Okay, but I'll end here. When you have caucus next week and you all gather now without Marilyn Gladu, will there be a conversation about, hey, we just need to make sure we're all saying the things you're saying, focused on those things, and that nobody else is going to go out the door?
I'm more interested in understanding how the Liberal caucus is going to look with Stephen Guilbeault, Laurie Idlut, and Marilyn Gladu all sitting around the same table. It's betraying a party that clearly has no core sense of values. And our caucus, I think, we've had great space to be frank. We talk openly. We have debates. I'm not confident other parties in the Parliament have that success. And I'm confident that we're going to walk in the room united, walk out the room united.
Shuvaloy Majumdar, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it very much.
Good to see you.
New Liberal MP Marilyn Gladu says it's Prime Minister Mark Carney's vision for Canada that prompted her decision to cross the floor.
The big things that he is driving, nation-building projects, diversifying our trade, bolstering our defense, plans to address criminality and build more homes. These are all the things that Canadians want.
Some of Gladu's past comments around access to abortion, conversion therapy, and her opposition to the legalization of marijuana have raised questions about what the values of an increasingly powerful Liberal government under Mark Carney actually are. For more on the latest floor crossing, the upcoming byelections, and what that all means for polling numbers, I'm joined by David Coletto from Abacus Data and Éric Grenier from the Writ. Nice to see you both again, gentlemen. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
David, I'm going to start with you because you have a poll out this morning. So I just want to let's sort of set a snapshot of where things are. And I think where things are is pretty stable, pretty not moving, as it were.
Yeah, it really is. We've got, the government's approval rating holding at 54, which is where it's been pretty much for most of 2026. The Prime Minister's personal numbers are plus 22 favorability, which is, well ahead of Mr. Poilievre or Mr. Lewis. And when you ask people how they were going to vote, the Liberals have a clear lead, not as big as some of the other pollsters, but 6 points nationally with big leads in British Columbia, Quebec, and Ontario. So, yeah, Rosie, I think the picture shows one of stability and one where the Liberals very clearly have an advantage, which I think is helping spark these floor crossings that we've seen and the one from Ms. Gladu last week.
Well, Éric, let me pick up on a point then that Tanja just made, and that is that some people around Mr. Carney are viewing this as an anti-Trump coalition, that's essentially what he's building. And I wonder if that's sort of what you're seeing in terms of the polling numbers and where those issues lie for people.
Well, when we do see, especially in David's polling, for example, when asking Canadians what one of their top issues is, Donald Trump and the U.S. administration is usually one of the top ones. And among those people who say that is a top issue, the Liberals have a huge advantage. So I do think that there might be something to that, especially when you see that Mark Carney's approval ratings are majority. Government satisfaction ratings are majority, sometimes as high as 60%. So I do think you do see some cross-partisan support for both the Prime Minister and the government from Conservatives, from New Democrats, from Bloc voters. So there is an element of truth to that claim. And, we just saw a poll this morning from Ipsos coming out showing that a majority of Canadians actually supported Mark Carney getting a majority through the by-election. So I do think that you do see that there is something to that there.
Well, maybe you want to pick up on that, David, whether you're seeing any discomfort from what people are saying about the idea of a majority and a majority that is achieved in the way that Mr. Carney will likely do it.
Well, I think if you really don't like that idea, it's because you really don't like Mr. Carney.
Right.
And that's about, 1 in 3 Canadians are just under that. So there is a sizable minority who are going to be deeply unhappy come Monday if the government does get that majority and does it in the way that they have by largely poaching members of the party they voted for in the case of the Conservatives. So I think that will create a lot of discomfort. But generally speaking, I think we, in the broader scheme of how I look at public opinion right now, I think what most Canadians actually are looking for is stability, some level of certainty around the world. And if a majority government at least checks one of those boxes and says, look, I'm not going to have to worry about an election. I'm not going to have to worry about the politics getting in the way of us dealing with these threats that are largely external in people's minds. I think that's where most people will land. They'll be uncomfortable with floor crossings. But that uncomfortable feeling won't overcome the desire for a sense of certainty and stability.
Let's talk a little bit about the by-elections. You can make projections or predictions if you want. I think Éric, we would expect the Liberals to pretty easily hold the two in Toronto. So it's really the Terrebonne by-election that, in my mind, isn't settled. What do you think we might see tomorrow? What are you watching for?
Yeah, absolutely. The two Toronto ridings are absolutely safe ridings for the Liberals. They won it by huge margins in the last election, and poll after poll is showing that the Liberals are doing very well in Ontario. So expecting that they'll get those two, which will put them over the 172 seat mark needed for majority. Terrebonne is really the question mark. It was decided by one vote in the last election. We haven't really seen an indication of huge movement in Quebec. The Liberals still lead by a lot, but they won Quebec by a lot in the last election. So we don't really know what's going to happen there. It's clear that both parties are putting in a lot of effort. We saw at the Montreal Convention that Tatiana Auguste, the candidate for the Liberals in Terrebonne, was one of the introduction speeches for Mark Carney. So clearly they want to put her front and center. They want to put as much effort into that riding as possible. Because yes, they might already have the majority through Toronto or the two Toronto by-elections. Every little extra seat is going to matter over the next 3 years. So I think they want to make sure that they pick up one on Monday.
What about you, David? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it echoes what Éric said. I think they're going to win in Terrebonne tomorrow night. We may not find out by tomorrow night because of the write-in ballot situation, but I think it's going to likely be close. And I mean, the only indicators we have are what the polls are saying is happening in Quebec, and it looks, if not like, but maybe even more favorable for the Liberals than in last year's federal election. So that's why I'm signaling. And turnout's been up, which it's hard to read. Is that good for an incumbent, bad for an incumbent? I'll read it as people know this is going to be a close election, which is why I think it's still going to be one, but one that favors the Liberals.
Okay, I only have about 2 minutes left, but I do want you both to sort of weigh in on Pierre Poilievre's numbers, which don't seem to be improving. Correct me if I'm wrong there, both of you. But and now having lost a fourth MP, it is not a great situation for him. Although the party still continues to hold pretty strong. Éric, you can start us off there.
Yeah, the Conservatives are still competitive, although some polls have them really where Aaron O'Toole or Andrew Scheer were in the previous two elections, which I don't think the Conservatives think was a winning result. Pierre Poilievre's own numbers remain pretty poor, especially compared to Mark Carney, but they haven't been getting worse. If anything, they might be getting a little bit better in terms of his unfavorables, maybe in part because of the new tone. But I think the biggest problem for him is that he's had a series of bad news, and the polls just keep on kind of hammering that bad news. And the three by-elections, they're not competitive, any of them, but they're also not going to be good news for him if the Liberals, as expected, get their majority.
Last minute to you, David, on that.
Yeah, I think for Mr. Poilievre, it's all in relative terms. He is up against what is right now a very popular prime minister, leader of the Liberal Party, and so everything in comparison is going to look pretty bad. I look at a historical lens on this, and I say, well, Mr. Poilievre isn't as unpopular as Mr. O'Toole or Mr. Scheer were at the quote near the end of their leaderships, but he is polarizing. He's not finding or converting anyone who wouldn't otherwise vote Conservative to his cause, which remains always his biggest barrier. Can he solve for it? I don't think so. Does he need to? Well, in the current context, he would. But again, as long as Mr. Carney is polling plus 50% favorable numbers, it's a world that any opposition leader, I think, would face a daunting task with.
I know you guys will be up very late tomorrow night, just like me. We'll hope it's not too late. Thank you both very much. David Coletto from Abacus Data, Éric Grenier from the Writ. Nice to see you both. Have a good rest of your Sunday.
Thanks, Rosie.
Bye, guys.